Hey everybody, this is Harvey Sluggo Wasserman back for the 234th, count them 234, Green Grassroots Emergency Election Protection Coalition Zoom call. Every week I say that faster. We got 50 people with us to start. It is August 11th, and it's around 2 o'clock Pacific time. We have an incredible, God, there, one thing you got to say for Trump, man, he keeps he keeps the agenda full. I did a little research just before the call, and we will get to it. But at this point in time, there are 27, count them, 27 women accusing Donald Trump on record of sexual misconduct. As Myla Reason put it, is that all? I don't think it is. Actually, we will see going forward, and we're going to talk about that in a minute. We're expecting the presence of the great John Brakey, along with Ken Bennett, our favorite Republican. But we're going to start with Mimi German. Mimi's out in Rattlesnake Country in Eastern Oregon. She is our poet laureate. She's got a poem for us, and then we'll check in with America's mayor, Heidi Lambert, previously known as Rudy Giuliani, but you're way better looking than he is. So go ahead, Mimi, please, and then we'll go to my Mayor Heidi, and then John Brakey will be with us. Go ahead, Mimi, please, with our poem.
Hey, it's nice to see everybody today. Harvey, you look really young today. Not sure what you've done, but must be slathering avocado on your pretty skin.
Exactly right. Exactly.
Yeah.
Right.
So I have a short little poem today. It's called Lay Down Your Flag. Poverty has laid its flag on the table, pounded down a juggernaut of disaffection, slobbered over the meal ticket on the cutting board, cut off a finger, and gave it to the king. Thank you.
What did the king do with it?
I can't say on the radio.
All right. Well, listen, thank you, Mimi, for that wonderful poem. We do appreciate it. Mayor Heidi of Waldport, Oregon, what's the latest in your miasma? And then we are joined by Ken Bennett. Hi, Ken, and John Brakey in Arizona. We want to find out what's going on out in the state of Arizona. And then we're going to talk about the 27 women that are accusing Trump, his attack on Washington, D.C., the latest on Sydney What's-Her-Face, and then we're going to deal with the economy. As they say way back when, it's the economy stupid. And boy, is the economy starting to look stupid. So Mayor Heidi, thank you for that again, Mimi, for that wonderful poem. Mayor Heidi, give us a minute on what's the latest in America's democracy here.
Well, in small town America, I am still mayor. So I'm going to go to my next city council meeting this next Thursday. They are still recalling my entire council, everyone but me, for their unconstitutional removal of me, which they still don't think they did anything wrong. So the signatures are pretty easy to get right now. We actually only need 200 signatures. That's how small my town is. 200 signatures times 6 to recall all 6 of council. And then I'm going to be by myself there. So the commissioners from the county are going to have to come in and sit with me at my dais to help appoint 3 other counselors so that I could have a quorum to then appoint the rest of the council. And then they all get to run to keep their seats in November. So politics are hot in the little town of Waldport right now.
Man,
2000.
I hope you're keeping good notes. This is going to make a great movie.
It's just, it's unreal. It's almost too unreal for a movie, Harvey. Really, it is. It's just nuts.
This is the age of Trump, man. All reality is suspended, as Ken and John are going to tell us from Arizona, which is slightly larger than Waldport, Oregon, and a lot harder. But
But still, the refusal to work with each other. I mean, that's really where I'm at. Is not democracy supposed to be about confrontation and disagreement? Where have we lost our ability to be diplomatic and democracy, to hold democracy with each other? That's really what I'm working for. Is just
democracy actually took a turn with the publication of Mein Kampf. I didn't read it. I actually once held a copy of Mein Kampf in my hand that had been signed by Hitler. It was a horrible feeling. I got it right. I gave it right back. But
Can I
in the little corner, it said, "A Hitler." He
Can
was
I
in some
share
books.
something?
Yeah.
Sluggo, you know what? You're reminding me. I had this meeting with a woman named Melissa Bird. She's running for Congress here in Oregon. And we were talking about Gaza. And she was saying, you have to remember Hitler got his way of doing things from the way that we treated brown people when we came and took over America. Like literally, we created that system of destruction. And with that, I'm gonna jump off
Okay.
and let
Well,
you all.
you're gonna keep us posted on democracy in Waldport, Oregon, and maybe some folks who need a quick explanation. Mayor Heidi was expelled by 6 right-wing city councilors. She got reinstated through the court system and is now having the 6 city councilor recalled. So it couldn't be better. This is democracy in action, and this is why Trump and his folks hate democracy. It wasn't the Jews that Hitler hated most. It was democracy, and
Yes.
the same is true of our current guy. So there you go. Thank you so much, Mayor Heidi. We're going to now. I got it. Somehow got muted. We're going to go with one of America's great heroes, John Brakey, who's with another of America's great heroes, Ken Bennett, to talk about democracy in Arizona, which is very, very critical state, obviously. And we're curious to know what's going on, Ken, with gerrymandering and all that. But John Brakey actually has just gone to Las Vegas for a national convention on democracy and was thrown out. But the important thing, John, the number one thing is you got your $500 back. So tell us very quickly how this happened in a couple minutes, and then introduce for us, please, the great Ken Bennett.
John's mute is on. There we go.
Okay, I'm set now. And first, I want to say to Heidi, thank you for what you do. Okay, I'm very impressed what happened and how you stood up and did things. And that's the same thing for me. I am very disappointed what happened at the event. And it was
So the event was a national conference on democracy to be pro-democracy in Las Vegas. You paid $500 to get into this thing. You were passing out a leaflet and they threw you out. Is that right?
Wasn't passing out any leaflets yet. Okay. And what I had is I'm showing it right here. It's a brochure and it's nothing about denialism. It's about hope. It's about Ken Bennett and Ken Bennett, how he put together 5 points, okay, which he's going to talk about because our country is in really big trouble. You know, when people talk about the fact that democracy is in trouble, let me tell you how bad it really is, okay? The Pew report came out and it says only 17% of the people in this country believe that voting really works. But I want you to know that's not the real number. The real number is 3%. Because if your side won, it was a good election. And that's what they think. And I just want to read a quote from Ken Bennett, okay? And this tells you that what kind of a character this guy is, okay?
Okay.
And his brother, okay, from a different mother and a different party. Okay. But anyway, when one side sees elections as fair and the other sees them as rigged, we no longer are sharing a democracy. We are fighting over a broken scoreboard, okay? That's why tools like Abe exist. And that's why Ken, me, and others built this tool, because nobody in this country should walk away from a digital ballot box because it has a ballot image. It's a hybrid system. When I say hybrid system, we have a ballot image and we got a physical ballot, okay? And the images should be released publicly 2 days after an election. And Ken's going to go ahead and explain that, okay?
Okay. So John Brakey, you've been active in Arizona. You have pioneered a real grassroots democracy and a system by way which everybody gets a paper ballot. They mark the paper ballot, it's scanned, and then it's made available to be counted reliably. And Ken Bennett, you have been the Republican Speaker of the House or the Senate, is it?
president of the Senate, Harvey.
been president of the Senate of the state of Arizona as a Republican, and the Republican Party just somehow forced you out. So give us an update on the state of Arizona, the gerrymandering, and what else is happening there, please.
Well, Harvey,
We got 83 people with us.
Okay, thank you. I think, there's a vigorous debate in Arizona as far as gerrymandering and drawing the boundaries of our congressional districts and things like that. About 2 decades ago, more than 2 decades ago, Arizona voters voted to take that task away from the state legislature. And so we have and have had for about 25 years a independent redistricting commission, and it's appointed by Republicans and Democrats, but also by the top Republican in the Senate gets to appoint one person to the commission. The top Democrat in the Senate gets to appoint one person to the commission. The same in the House of Representatives. So it's usually the Speaker and the minority leader in the House, the president of the Senate in the Senate, and the minority leader in the Senate. So you've got 4 legislators, 2 Republicans and 2 Democrats, who appoint one person each to a 5-member commission. So as you can imagine, when Republicans usually appoint Republicans and Democrats normally appoint Democrats, the first 4 members of the commission are 2 Republicans and 2 Democrats. Then those 4 individuals have to select from people who have applied to be on the commission an independently registered person to fill the 5th position on the independent redistricting commission. And that person, the independent, actually ends up being the chair of the commission. And so for the last 2, maybe 3 10-year cycles in Arizona, the legislature has not been redistricting Arizona. It's been this redistricting commission. And it has worked fairly well. I think it's worked better than what happens in many states where the legislature is trying to district their own districts or design their own districts, as well as the congressional districts. And you inevitably have accusations of whichever party is in control of the legislature in a given state is usually accused of gerrymandering that state for their benefit in the state legislature and in the congressional delegation. So Arizona has not had allegations of gerrymandering really for about 30 years because we've had this independent redistricting commission.
Now, has Trump sent in troops yet to overthrow this system?
No. No.
Okay. Well, you can expect that. You better call out the government.
Well, it's the law that was passed is in Arizona's constitution now. It was embedded in Arizona's constitution, and every 10 years after the normal cycle of the census, the next year this 5-member commission comes together and they work very, very hard, and they get a budget from the legislature of a few $1 million for that first year, and then they come up with the districts. They come up with the 30 districts for the legislature, and they come up with the 9 districts for the congressional district. And,
wow, that sounds reasonably sane. We went through this in California, thanks in part to Arnold Schwarzenegger, who put $3 million into 2 statewide campaigns. One was for the legislature and one was for the congressional delegation. I think it was in 2008 and 10. And they successfully set up an independent commission. So we, for 15 years, have had a reasonably sane districting situation in California, which the governor now wants to scrap to match Texas.
Newsom wants to scrap.
Newsom wants to scrap the nonpartisan commission, which I think is a great system to setting up the districts in California in favor of something that he can gerrymander in favor of the Democrats. And I am highly
both parties seem incapable of resisting the temptation to use their control when they are in control to gerrymander districts in their own favor. Right. And I don't think the Republicans or the Democrats are either
to be trusted.
any more capable any more capable of resisting that temptation than the other party. So yeah, you've got Democrats screaming at what the Republicans are doing in Texas, but you've got I think the reverse happens in
Yeah.
states that are controlled by Democrats. So
Well,
Arizona.
if the California system or the Arizona system or a version thereof was in place nationwide, we wouldn't have a gerrymander situation. Is that right, John Brakey?
I would definitely say that. And but this is a very serious situation in Texas. Illinois is talking, a bunch of states. John Simon did a tremendous report on this, on who, what, why, and I would advise people to Google that and John Simon and read it. It's just phenomenal what he put together. And he did it in a bipartisan way of thinking. He called it the pink and the blue or something like that.
Yeah. Steve Caruso, did you want to say something quickly?
Yeah.
To welcome?
In Ohio, the election commission is now being subsumed under the Secretary of State, whereas before it was nonpartisan. So we're yet to see what's going to happen there. Obviously, if it's under control of one person, then they're going to try to tilt things their way. So,
and we, as Steve knows, we've had two referenda in Ohio that successfully mandated, a system like the one we have in California or Arizona to be nonpartisan. It was upheld by the Chief Justice of the Ohio Supreme Court, and the gerrymandered legislature of Ohio has refused to allow it to happen. So we still have a terribly gerrymandered state, and despite two public referenda and
the Supreme Court weighed in and said they got to do it, but the Supreme Court didn't hold them in contempt. I mean, who's going to start holding these people accountable? Obviously, nobody's doing it, and people are going to have to take things into their own hands respectfully and civilly. But this is where we've come to, where people are being treated like a third world country within their own country, and this is not the United States.
So, Ken Bennett, you have been ousted by your own party. What is your plan for Arizona going forward?
Well, I'm going to continue. I've joined John's board of directors down at Audit USA. Americans United for Democracy and something in transparency. And our focus is bringing transparency, public verifiability, and trackability to our elections. Since I became involved in elections in Arizona, which was in 2009, January of 2009 is when I became the Secretary of State. I was elected to a term then. I was appointed. I was the president of the Senate when Janet Napolitano was the Democrat governor of Arizona in 2003, 4, 5, and 6. But then when she left the governor's office and Jan Brewer, our Secretary of State, Arizona doesn't have a lieutenant governor. The Secretary of State is the number 2, although that's changing next year, but we are going to have a lieutenant governor. But for 100 and some odd years, Arizona's not had a lieutenant governor. The number 2 position was Secretary of State. So when Napolitano left in 2009, Jan Brewer, the then secretary, became governor. She appointed me to replace her as secretary. And then we were both reelected to governor and Secretary of State in 2010.
She was a Democrat and she appointed you, who were Republican. Is that correct?
No, Brewer was Republican as well.
Oh, okay.
That was one of the things that people were a little bit surprised about Napolitano leaving, because she knew that in leaving, she was going to elevate a Republican Secretary of State to the governor's office. And Brewer, a Republican, appointed me to replace her as the Secretary of State. So during my 6 years as Secretary of State, I oversaw 12 statewide elections or multi-jurisdictional elections. And it was then that I started hearing about this John Brakey down in Tucson. And my staff seemed to talk about him mostly as though he was kind of a burr under their saddle. And
only in Arizona would somebody say that, but go ahead.
But I have found John to be delightful. As he says, we're brothers from different mothers. But
same father, though.
Right. As I've been involved in elections, I have become more and more convinced that the things John has been talking about for more than 20 years now, transparency, trackability, and public verifiability of our elections, are exactly what needs to happen. So I have joined their board of directors. I'm actually the chair of the board now.
Great chairman.
And I'm the chairman of the board of Audit USA.
Okay, it's Audit USA, AUDIT USA. Everybody look that up. This is John Brakey's pioneering organization. One of the reasons that these calls got going in April 2020 was because of John's work in trying to verify elections. And here we are 5 years later, and we have a system in total chaos.
We do.
So. And yet, John and I really got close when he agreed to be my Democrat counterpart for the big audit, the fraudit, some call it, but I call it an audit. Maricopa, the election of 2020, Biden won Arizona by about 10,000 votes, a little over 10,000 votes. But he lost most of the state and managed to win Maricopa County by about 40,000 votes. So the state Senate, which was controlled by Republicans, which was having a hard time accepting the 2020 results in Arizona that Biden had actually won, they decided that they wanted to audit Maricopa County. They could not accept the fact that Biden could have possibly won Maricopa County. And Maricopa County is more than 2/3 of the state.
Right. Maricopa, I think, is the second or third largest county in the country behind LA County and I think Cook, maybe in Illinois. So the question then becomes, what is happening now, Ken and John in Arizona? I want to bring in Mike Hersh. We're seeing this gerrymandering thing. So I guess you're going to miss that in Arizona. Is that correct?
Yeah, we won't have a redistricting in Arizona until the normal 10-year cycle in 2030, when the census is taken nationwide in 2030. This independent redistricting commission will redistrict Arizona in 2031 for the 2032 elections. In the meantime, we were already redistricted back in 2020 for this decade, and there's really not a redistricting debate going on in Arizona right now.
Okay, and I interrupted you. You were finishing a story.
Well, what I did want to say is that as I've come to work very closely with John Brakey and joined the board of Audit USA, we have come up with it's kind of KISS, keep it simple, stupid, a very simple 5-point plan on how to verify elections. And we are promoting that plan here in Arizona, and we're promoting it nationwide, which is why John went to the DEF CON meeting, and it was sponsored by Free Speech for People, I think.
Free speech, but that's
Free speech.
Free group. I just want to say that there's a terrible misunderstanding going on. Okay. You know, the lady who's really angry and saying I'm lying and all that, even though she works for them, she's got hearsay. She's not getting the facts.
So unfortunately, John followed all their rules, and when he was asked to not pass out his brochure inside the room and do it out in the hallway, that's exactly what he did, and they still confronted him and wanted to throw him out. But I'm going to go back to the elections. Here's the 5.
Oh, yeah, let's hear the 5 points and then we'll move ahead.
Here's the 5 ways to verify that elections were done correctly. 1 is to verify who the eligible voters were by name and address. Voter rolls are public information in most states. So it's easy, and we already could and should be doing that. But verify by name and address. Go in Yavapai County, how many Kenneth Roy Bennetts are there registered to vote? Or at my address, 2150 Ewin Drive, how many Kenneth Roy Bennetts are registered? If there's 1, we're okay. If there's a Kenneth Roy and a Ken and a Kenny and a Kenny R and a Ken R, if there's 18 variations of Kenneth Roy Bennett registered there, we know we have a problem. Second is verify who voted. We know that after the election has been conducted, after election night, it's called the voting history. It's recorded in everybody's voter history file. When you vote an election, the county that you're registered in records that you voted, not how you voted. How you voted is on an anonymous ballot somewhere in the system, but the fact that you did vote is simply recorded. So step 1, verify who's registered to vote by name and address. 2, verify who voted. there shouldn't be anybody on the who voted list that wasn't on the eligible to vote list.
Okay.
Number 3, make sure that there's the exact number of ballots accounted for and tabulated in the system as there were the number of people who voted. If you've got 1 million people registered to vote and 800,000 vote, you should have 800,000 ballots. No more, no less.
Okay.
Step four is publicly release the images of the ballots that are captured when they go through the machine. They're anonymous. A person's name is not on the ballot, but when a ballot goes through the machine, a picture is taken of that ballot, and the whole software of the system, whatever system you're using, is based on telling the system black dots in these places are votes for these people. A black dot here is a vote for Smith in this race. A black dot in here is a vote for Garcia in that race. So the ballot images, if you release the ballot images and then what's called the cast vote record, which is the record of the votes cast, that's a spreadsheet. Spreadsheet has rows and columns. Each row on that spreadsheet corresponds to a particular ballot. Ballot number 600 that went through the system, wherever it went through, is on row 600. The columns on the cast vote record spreadsheet are the choices that the voter exercised on their ballot. Column A is Smith, column B is Jones, column D is Garcia, and on and on and on. So if you have the ballot images and the cast vote record, you can verify 1 or 2 or 100 or 1,000 ballot images to make sure that the votes on those ballots were correctly recorded in the spreadsheet. And then you could go to the bottom of the columns of that spreadsheet and see that Smith got 10,000 votes and Jones got 8,000 votes. But if you have the ballot images and the cast vote record disclosed to the public, anybody can verify that everything was added up correctly. The fifth thing to do, which is kind of like cherry on the top of the ice cream sundae, is allow people who have any doubts to spot check, to randomly select 100, 200 maybe, verify that the ballot images collected by the machine match the actual paper ballot. If you randomly selected 1 or 2% of the ballot images that are collected by the machine and verify that the paper ballots that supposedly created those ballot images match exactly, now you have no doubt but that the election was fair. Because if you wanted to manipulate an election, if someone on the inside with access to the election management system, it's called the EMS, if someone wanted to manipulate an election, one of the ways you would probably do that is find a preferred ballot image according to your political desired result. And then once you've captured one of those, insert it in every 10th or 20th or 30th ballot, however many you need to make sure that that preferred result ended up being the total result of the election. But there's people concerned about whether the machines have been manipulated. There's people concerned about whether illegals are voting. They're concerned about whether people are voting twice. They're concerned about all kinds of things. Are the machines working correctly? Yes, we do a logic and accuracy test on them right before but all that means is that they were working for that specific moment. And if somebody manipulates them a minute later, you don't know if they were still. So all of the questions that create controversy and conspiracies about whether elections were done correctly or not are addressed by these 5 steps. Verify who was eligible to vote, verify who voted, make sure that there's the same number of ballots as people who voted, disclose the ballot images and the cast vote record, and allow a random sample of 1 or 2% of the actual paper ballots to make sure that the ballot images were not manipulated.
Sounds like something that would happen in a country with a democracy.
Exactly.
Right? Okay. Well, that's fantastic. Thank you, Ken Bennett.
And if you were running a 500-person homeowners association and you had a controversial vote about something, anything, and you had 500 potential voters in your homeowners association, you would know who's eligible to vote in this HOA vote. Okay, I've got 500 people. The first thing you do is make sure that only those 500 people were eligible to vote. Next thing you would record who among those 500 voted. Well, these 400 voted, 80%. That's what we had in Arizona the last two presidential election cycles. 80% of the registered Arizona voters voted in the presidential elections in 2024 and 2020. But you would verify that only people in the HOA were voting and that we know exactly who voted. Okay, 400 people in my HOA voted. Do I have 400 ballots? Yes. Okay. And then if there was any question, whatever the question was, if someone won or lost by one vote, what you would do is you would put the ballots out on the table and the spreadsheet that you added them up on, and you would let anybody in the HOA go through and make sure that Smith got 250 votes and Jones got 150. Here's how close the election was in Arizona in 2020, that Trump could not accept his loss. If Arizona was 1,000 people in 2020, when Biden beat Trump by 10,500 votes, if Arizona was 1,000 people, we had 80% voter turnout, 800. If there were 800 votes in Arizona in the 2020 election, Biden got 401, Trump got 399.
Wow. Jeez.
2 out of 800. That's how close the election was in Arizona between Trump and Biden in 2000, which is probably why Trump couldn't accept it. So we recounted. We hand counted 2.1 million ballots in Maricopa County to verify whether he really lost Maricopa County, because he lost the machines, and the county election folks told us that Biden won by 40,000 votes in Maricopa County. The rest of the state, Trump won by 30,000. Biden won Maricopa by 40,000. So he won the state by 10,000. That's why the Senate wanted to audit the election in Maricopa County, because Trump won the rest of the state by 30,000. And then one county he lost by 40,000. So we hand counted 2.1 million ballots in Maricopa County. Actually, it wasn't 2.1. It was 2,089,563 ballots. We hand counted 2,089,563 ballots, and we confirmed that Trump did not lose Maricopa County by 40,000. He lost by 40,300.
Unbelievable.
But we came within 300 votes out of 2.1 million and confirmed the election. And that's why I sat in front of the Congressional Oversight Committee of Congress and said Biden won Maricopa County. And ever since then, the Republicans have hated me.
Mind-boggling. That is
$1,000 to get him out. They took Mark Fincham, moved him from Tucson. He ran for Secretary of State. They put him up there and they slandered him. They spent incredible money, okay, on a House race. And this is what's happening.
State House race, right?
You know, I got
State Senate race.
Ken, you really look like a very dangerous guy. Just got that aura about you. Let's ask. We have Mila Reeson and Lynn. This is fascinating. We have 94 people with us. So go ahead, Mila, please, for Ken.
Oh, thank you, and thank you, John and Ken, for being with us. I followed some of the information that came out of the voting village and at the convention in Las Vegas, and what was particularly concerning was the ability that someone could possibly hack into the Dominion ballot marking devices. And I'm wondering, do you use Dominion voting systems in the state of Arizona?
Lynn, one of our, or is it Lynn? No.
Mila.
Can you hear me? Yeah.
In Arizona, we have 15 counties. Each county gets to decide, each county board of supervisors, they're called, gets to decide which election management system they use. Maricopa, the largest county, 2/3 of the state, the Phoenix metro area, uses Dominion. The county I live in, Yavapai, up in the north central part of the state, uses a system called Unison, and the other 13 counties use a system called ES&S, Election Systems and Software. So in Arizona, we have one of the 15 counties uses Dominion. The other counties uses one of 2 other systems.
But it's the big one. It's the big county that uses it. Okay.
And it was a Dominion. It was a Dominion election management system election in 20 that John and I were auditing in 2021. And we confirmed that a Dominion-run election in Maricopa County in 2020, when we hand counted 2.1 million ballots, we came up within 300 votes of what the county came up with by the machine.
Thank you.
Wow. Thank you. Thank you, Mila. Lynn Feinerman, and then we're going to move on. Absolutely fascinating, Ken Bennett. Thank you. We had an Attorney General, Keith Ellison, but you and Keith are the highest ranking state officials that we've had on so far, although we've had two Congress people. Go ahead, Lynn Feinerman, please.
Yes, hi, thanks. But forgive me if I haven't understood completely the system that you both have explained, but it appears to me that what you're dealing with principally is the people who are voting. And that, of course, reflects a lot of the news tripping out over voter fraud and all of that, which, of course, is problem is, and I put a link to an article in the chat in case it's out. The problem is that for ES&S, for example, which deals with the greater part of our election, this lady who writes Citizen in Bloom discovered that Jeffrey Dean and John Elder, two of the people that they hired to set up the election systems, were both imprisoned for computer fraud. And it is my, it's my that it would be for someone like Musk or whomever to bypass all of your good work and mess with the actual election systems, the actual election software. This kind of seems to beat people out when I talk about it. Greg Palast is always enraged that we're not just talking about voter suppression the way that, we suppress votes, but I'm concerned about it. I'm concerned because of the kind of people who are working on this and the danger to the actual software.
What do you think?
Which is why, Lynn, that those concerns are exactly why we've come up with these 5 steps. If you release the ballot images, the spreadsheet on which the votes from those ballot images were tabulated, and allow whatever random sample of comparing the ballot images to the actual paper ballots. Now in Arizona, we use paper ballots. 99.8% of all ballots cast in Arizona are a paper ballot. I am not a fan yet of ballot marking devices that don't produce some type of a paper trail so that you can audit whether that the votes cast by that voter were correctly recorded in the cast vote record. But even if you use ballot marking devices, as long as there is a paper trail created so that you can look at that ballot number 1,694,000 or whatever number that ballot was, if you can look at a paper reflection of the votes on that ballot and compare it to the line item in the cast vote record for that specific ballot. We don't know whose it was. We're not trying to find out how John Brakey voted. We're just saying that ballot number 1,600,001, we can see these selections were on the ballot paper. The image matches that, and those votes were correctly recorded in the cast vote record. And we can look at the columns in the cast vote record. There's a column for every candidate running in each of the different offices. We can see ballot by ballot, and there's now systems. John and I have come up with one called ABE. There's a nationwide company called Severa that is publishing ballot images for Idaho, the largest county in Idaho.
We're the guys who convinced them to do it.
Yeah. There's Ray Lutz in San Diego that has a system that can organize and show you that the ballot images, the votes on the ballot images correspond with the cast vote record. So we're not selling our system. We're just trying to make it available to anybody who wants to verify elections. We've got the actual voting data from a county in Maryland from some 5 or 6 years ago that anybody can run through a system in a matter of minutes or seconds. Actually, you can process about 7,000 ballots. What was the county, John? It
was Somerset, and you can
Somerset County in Maryland.
and do it probably in 58 seconds. You'll create
less than a minute. Less than a minute, you can download about 7,000 ballots in an actual county, in an actual election in Maryland, and then look at any of the ballots and make sure that the ballots were correctly recorded in the spreadsheet. And your concerns, Lynn, are addressed if you can compare the paper ballots to the ballot images captured by the machine to the spreadsheet where all of those votes were added up. If there is a manipulation by Musk, by the left, by the right, by the middle, somebody, the Russians, the whoever's, you can find it in minutes or hours.
Yeah.
Well, this is a rare island of sanity. I mean, and this is worth recording and worth printing out, that we actually have a system where elections can be run reliably. And, it's in Arizona, thanks to John Brakey and Ken Bennett. And here we are. I mean, we have 96 people who have just witnessed this presentation that seems like it's coming from another country, given what's going on now. But John Brakey, go ahead, and then we're going to move to Mike Hersh.
We want 2 days after the election, we had a bill that was going to do that. The governor vetoed it as a common cause. Thank you, common cause. Okay. It would be released by precinct, because in Arizona, we've gone to voting centers. We have vote by mail. You cannot put a physical precinct together in Arizona. All those ballots we counted in Maricopa, they were random. That's all. We counted 2 races. We want 2 days after the election, every precinct committee man and woman, whatever party, is going to be emailed the cast vote record. And we're going to have the ballot images in the clouds. You don't need to download 1,000 of them. Why don't you just pick up
what John is describing, and it can be done but with our little system that's for free, Abe, A Better Election. It can be done with Ray Lutz's system in San Diego. It can be done with Severa's system up in Idaho. They do it for Tarrant County, Texas. You can sort those ballot images down to the precinct level. Dealing with 2.6 million or 2.1 million ballots in Maricopa County is a nightmare. But there are precincts with 1,000 or 2,000 or 800 or 400 votes in any given election. And 5 or 6 precinct committeemen from either party or both could sit down with one of these tools, Abe, for example, and just look at the 600 ballots in their precinct. And they could look at them and count them and see that, yeah, that was a vote for Smith. That was a vote for Jones. And when we counted 600 of them, it came up to the exact number that the county told us it came up to. And because the counties report by precincts already in what's called a statement of votes cast. So in addition to telling you, like Maricopa County did in 2020, Biden won Maricopa County by 40,000. They had 753 precincts, which had anywhere from a few dozen to a couple thousand voters in each one of those precincts. But it was a small enough domain or group that a couple people or a few people could sit down at lunch on a Sunday afternoon and look at the ballots in a given precinct, and you can get it down to a small enough level that people can actually verify it themselves.
How many precincts are there in Maricopa County?
753.
There used to be 1,400 when we were 40% smaller. Okay. And because of vote by mail, they've combined, and it makes it more difficult. Their audits are practically worthless. They picked 52 batches of ballots before the election, and you shouldn't pick those batches until you commit data.
Okay, but John, don't get into the weeds there. To your point, Harvey, there's about 800 precincts in Maricopa County.
And does that give people a fair, what you consider a fair and reliable ability to read the reality of the election in Maricopa County?
Yes.
All right, then listen. So, folks, you've heard this first. In the midst of all the insanity in this country, we have just heard a presentation on a sane way to conduct a truly verifiable election. Is that correct?
Yes, sir. We crowdsource the truth. That's what we want to do. And give
fantastic. So we have 98 eyewitnesses here who've heard this. We will transcribe it. Steve will put it in writing. We'll make it available at freepress.org. And
Well,
it's
that
amazing
right
to know.
off, I will go ahead and take this brochure, give you a PDF of it,
Oh,
okay?
yeah, please.
And you'll be able to download a beta. And if you have Microsoft Office Excel, there's directions
All
to
right.
run it. Pretty
So we
simple.
have a document. We have a We also, by the way, John, we want the record of your arrest to accompany this,
That's coming out.
so that we will have proof that the a national convention on elections would not allow you to present it.
Sponsored by Free Speech for People. Free speech
Well,
for
apparently
people.
not. Apparently not free enough.
Yeah.
So listen, we had a ton of other stuff to cover today, but this is worth its weight in gold. I hope everybody appreciates what we just heard. This has been Ken Bennett here, former Republican Secretary of State of the state of Arizona and former Speaker of the House of Representatives of the state of Arizona, and John Brakey, one of the
Sluggo, I believe it's president of
Mike
the
Hersh, go
Arizona.
ahead.
I
Mike?
believe Ken is was the former president of the Arizona Senate.
Is that right, Ken?
Harvey wants to keep putting me in the House, but I never served in the House. I was always in the Senate, and I was Senate president for 4 years.
Yeah, he's padding your resume for you.
Yes, and you were also the Secretary of State of the state of Arizona.
6 years.
So congratulations. We have it straight from the horse's mouth, as opposed from the other end, which is where we're getting it mostly in this country now. We were going to talk about Sydney Sweeney. We'll do that next week. I do want to announce that the President of the United States has sent federal troops into Washington, D.C. We'll deal with that again. I also mentioned that I wanted to mention that, 27 people, the 27th woman has come forward to go on record as accusing Donald Trump of sexual misconduct. We'll make a note of that. But Mike Hersh, the key thing that we're looking at now in terms of elections in this country is gerrymandering. Now, Ken Bennett and John Brakey have told us that Arizona appears to be immune from gerrymandering, as we thought California was. And I got to tell you, I'm going to vote against changing the gerrymandering situation in California. I don't, it's a whole other situation. Mike, you had a discussion. Arnie Gundersen has joined us. We'll get to the nuclear issue in a few minutes at the top of the hour. That's 8 minutes away. But you have said there's some complications with gerrymandering, one of which is called dummymandering. And Ken and John, I think you'll find this interesting. Go ahead, Mike. Can you tell us about that, please?
Well, real quick, it looks like, we've all heard of Confederates and Civil War reenactors. It looks like Trump is the first War of 1812 reenactor sending troops into D.C. I hope he doesn't burn down the White House.
Well, James Madison had to run away. The Brits came in and they almost captured the President of the United States, James Madison, before they burned the White House. So go ahead.
And I believe Dolly Madison was left behind grabbing like the George Washington's portrait and some other things, and baking cookies maybe. But anyway, we've got a situation where, depending on how bad the economy is, and I hope we do still have time to talk about how Trump is nosediving the economy into oblivion. If the midterm elections happen with the economic chaos we're already starting to see, it's very likely that the so-called safe districts that Trump is leaning on his loyal cult members in various states to draw up for him, if they don't give themselves enough margin for error, that in a wave election they could end up losing a lot of seats. So it could actually boomerang and backfire on them.
And this has a word. It's called dummymandering, because the thing about gerrymandering, as you know, in Arizona, it's a zero-sum game. You can't add voters. I guess they could, but you can't add voters to make the balloon that you're stepping on bigger. And so if they're shifting people around between districts, they can screw up. Is that, Mike, the message of what you're saying here?
That's exactly right. And there's a couple ways to gerrymander. One is to have seats that are completely out of reach for the opposite party, and then you lock in a smaller margin, but you lock in those victories. The other one is to try to maximize the total number of seats in the legislature. And obviously you can't do this statewide, but this would affect the House, the U.S. House, and it also affects its state legislatures around the country. If you narrow that margin to spread your voters around so you have a small majority in the most number of seats possible, that does leave you vulnerable. And if the political winds of change blow hard against you, you could end up, I'm not really comfortable with that term dummy mandering. Maybe we could call it boomerang mandering or something, where it just it blows up in your face. You know, you end up like Wile E. Coyote chasing the roadrunner, but end up getting the short end of that. And I also hope we can welcome my dear friends Chuck Bonacchio and Diane Cameron to check in real quickly and kind of give us a preview of their presentations for next week, just like about a couple minutes each.
Okay, but one thing we got to mention, and you know, we've gone through this, the rest of the country does not have secure vote counts like we have in Arizona, thanks to Ken and John. And so as we head into the election, we don't know what the vote, you know, in places like Texas, wherever, we don't have a secure electoral system. And the vote count is not verifiable. So, you know, we're talking about a state where we've had tremendous talent and dedication from John and Ken and others to guarantee a fair vote count, and that the people who come out to vote actually get to vote, which of course in Georgia has been a real question, among others. But we don't have a secure system nationwide. And so it goes beyond gerrymandering. It goes to who gets to vote and whose votes are actually counted.
John Brakey had his hand up.
I just got a closing statement. It's just really quick.
Yes, please. And you guys have been great. Ken and John, tremendous presentations. Thank you.
I'm hoping out of the disaster that happened at DEF CON and the craziness I went through, that good things are going to come. We're stronger together. I'm talking about the people who say I'm lying or they didn't call, yet these people order me out or whatever. That doesn't. What really matters is that we now, we don't want an apology. We want Ken Bennett and we want Adrian Fontes. He's sitting in the middle doing a panel on DEF CON.
Adrian Fontes is the Secretary of State of Arizona. Well, John, the big question I have is, why didn't you come on wearing an orange jumpsuit?
They wouldn't arrest me.
Oh, okay. All right. Well, I hope that continues to be the case. John Brakey and Ken Bennett, we want to turn this.
And there's a really huge, we're still digging into the facts. And all my message to them is that, hey, shit happens. And we have to go ahead and make sure we come together and work together. I'm willing to say to them, hey, sorry.
In the tradition of John Lewis,
you need to
John
own
Brakey.
Happen. But if you
Thank
don't,
you, John Brakey. Thank you, Ken Bennett. Diane, John, thank you, guys. Chuck and Diane, go ahead, and then we go Marion Edey, and then we've got Arnie Gundersen taking us to the nuclear world. Go ahead, Arnie. No, I'm sorry. Chuck, real quick, and Diane.
Yeah. So I dropped into the chat right here just a preview of what I'd like to talk about next week in terms of really bringing ourselves together related to what we've just heard Ken and John, excellent presentation, fighting fascism. So how we define it, how we defeat it, we have to see it and say it. And secondly, a clear definition, and then understanding that what's coming at us is not going to stop. That fascism never relents, never gives up power, never cedes anything. We've got to be relentless. We've got to be persistent. And so I look forward to talking with everybody next week. Thanks so much, Harvey.
Well, thank you, Chuck. And, you know, if you're in D.C., you'll be talking to a federally occupied territory. And absolutely. I do, by the way, blame Barack Obama for a lot of this because he had the power, as did Bill Clinton, to make D.C. a state. And it should have been a state a long time ago. And now it's in a state of occupation. So we'll talk about that next week. Thank you, Diane. Thank you, Chuck. And stay with us, please, on Nukes. Diane Cameron, and then we go to Marion Edey briefly, and then Arnie Gundersen. Go Go ahead, Diane.
Citizens won a victory in Montgomery County, Maryland on July 29th of this year. Our county council voted 10-1 to remove a proposed 5-mile highway from our master plan, thus killing it legally.
Wow.
And I look forward to,
Fantastic.
yes, thank you. We are celebrating, and thank you to Mike Hersh and Marion Edey for your longtime support. And I look forward to telling you how we did it in a future.
We look forward to that. Thank you so much, Diane. Absolutely. Okay. Marion Edey, erstwhile founder of the League of Conservation Voters and a tremendous activist over the decades. Go ahead, Marion. And then we'll go to Arnie, and we'll come also to Mimi later.
Okay. So I can't show my video, right? Not allowed.
No, not right now. We can't show videos on this thing.
Okay. Okay, so that's not happening. I wanted to say that I had another Zoom call which conflicted, which stopped me from listening to most of what John Brakey and Ken Bennett had to say. And I want to get to tell them that I want to have a call with John because I was and Ken. Because
all right, we'll set you up. We'll set you up, Marion, and we do have archived, thanks to Steve Caruso. These calls are archived and they're easily available at grassrootsep.org.
You don't even need to set me up. I just call him. But he was in the mountains before, and I couldn't hear a word he had to say.
All right. Well,
now he knows. I want to connect, and if he would put it in the chat, his best email address if it's changed or anything like that.
And I'll email you both of you. So
okay, that works. That's all.
Thank you, Marion.
Hello.
Yes, thank you. Thank you so much, Marion. We appreciate that.
Thank you, and I will. And I was in the mountains, and what a trip.
Okay. All right. Arnie Gundersen, and then we'll go to Mimi. But Arnie, well, first of all, Arnie, you get the prize for best shirt. We like that. And you come in second to Gary O'Connor for the best beard. So you're a two-time winner here. But you're also the champion as the greatest nuclear expert we have. I got to say, Arnie's been in the nuclear industry for a long, long time. And when Fukushima happened, nobody seemed to be able to talk with any intelligence in March 2011 except Arnie Gundersen. And he was the go-to guy all over the world to explain what was, God forbid, was happening at Fukushima. I will claim, by the way, the rights to the first major internet piece because a friend of mine called me at 3 a.m. and said, "Hey, look what's going on here." And I wrote the first piece that went worldwide on the internet, basically saying, "Thank God this wasn't Indian Point." But it was bad enough. It was in Japan, and thank God. I hate to say this, but the wind at Fukushima was not blowing south. It was blowing towards us in Los Angeles, but nonetheless, it did not blow straight into Tokyo, which they feared it could have, and they were talking about evacuating Tokyo. We're also joined, by the way, by Roger Rappaport, former editor of the University of Michigan Daily, right after me in 1967, who's in Western Michigan and dealing with the Palisades reactors. So first, we're going to start with the great Arnie Gundersen, who has really been responsible for a tremendous part of the safe energy movement. And Arnie, we've had a unique situation nobody ever imagined. Maybe you did. No one ever imagined that a president of the United States would remove a duly approved commissioner of the Nuclear Regulatory Commission. This has now happened. Do you want to start there?
How about if I start 50 years earlier?
Go for it, please.
We've
got the time now.
We're 3 minutes.
3 o'clock Pacific time, and this whole hour is set for energy.
There's this concept, academics call it regulatory capture, and outfits like the FDA or the EPA or the FAA they start out with the greatest of intentions, and then the industry that's regulating them begins to encircle them and capture them. That's not what happened at the Nuclear Regulatory Commission. We have at the NRC, we have regulatory collusion. When you're captured, you want to escape. But when you've got collusion going on, you really don't. And this dates back to the Manhattan Project, where the industry and the regulators were cozy. And one of my favorite books is The Day We Bombed Utah. And it talks about the cover up with the old Atomic Energy Commission about the amount of radiation that fell on Utah. So we're dealing with we have never had a watchdog. I've always said we had a lapdog. And the recent stuff under Trump, really, if we had a lapdog, Trump has cut the lapdog's teeth off and cut his vocal cords, so he can't bark anymore. What happened?
By the way, you know that Donald Trump is the first president in recent history to not have a dog. So yes. I guess we can say the Nuclear Regulatory Commission has been his dog. But go ahead.
That's true. So anyway, yeah, Trump removed a plain vanilla guy. I mean, it's not like he was an anti-nuclear wacko or anything like that. He was a true believer. He just didn't go far enough. We got to remember that all 5 commissioners forever are appointed. They're presidential appointees, and it's always been 2 Democrats, 2 Republicans. And the chair is the president's party. So it's always been that way. And other thing you got to remember is that the Nuclear Energy Institute, NEI, is a lobbying organization, and they vet the NRC commissioners. So we've never had objective commissioners. The last one I can remember is Greg Yasko. And he was Harry Reid's chief of staff when Harry became head of the House of Representatives. That's the only reason he got in. And in a palace coup, the other 4 commissioners got him thrown out. So this has always been an agency that not has been captured, but is in collusion. And under Trump, it's even worse.
Well, I have to correct. Actually, Donald Trump did have a dog, but the dog was shot by Kristi Noem. So anyway, so where do we stand now with Nuclear Regulatory Commission, and what are the key issues that we're facing, including Palisades in Michigan, which Roger Rappaport has been reporting on from Michigan with Kevin Camps and others. We have 86 people with us.
Does Roger want to go first, or how do you want to do
Roger, do you want to talk quickly?
Yeah, sure. Well, very quickly. And I think, Arnie, you can weigh in on this. Effectively, what's happened is they've green-lighted the restart of a nuclear power plant. Now, this is not the first plant to be nominated. There are 2 others, one in Iowa, and then there's, of course, the other 3 Mile Island plant. But here's the thing that Arnie will tell you. The company that is doing the 3 Mile Island plant is one of the largest fleet operators in the world. And they've decided to go ahead. And this is a company that actually runs reactors on a daily basis. And they're taking 3 years for this restart. Holtec, which is a company that's never run a nuclear reactor. And remember, the company that closed Palisades in 2022, Energy, was a very experienced fleet operator. And they closed it for 2 reasons. One is that effectively they had to replace the steam generators, which was $500 million, because they were obsolete and there was no way to keep them going. And the other problem was they had lost their lucrative power purchase agreement, which they gotten from Consumers Power, now Consumers Energy in Michigan. So effectively, when Consumers got rid of the plant for the same reason, which it had a very difficult history for them, Consumers never ran the plant. They had a third-party operator, another company that ran it for them. Part of the deal when they got rid of it was that they signed this power purchase agreement as an energy provider to buy power from Energy. When they lost that deal, Energy now had 2 reasons to close the plant. And in fact, they closed it ahead of schedule. Now, Holtec, which bought the plant and got a license essentially on the argument that they were decommissioning the plant, which meant they told the NRC, look, the code that applies to every other plant doesn't apply to us because we only have a decommissioning license. So then after they got permission to start the plant, which, by the way, they were doing on their own without a license, within weeks, after this approval, basically they were okay to continue working on. They now have been approved to go ahead in this month to start loading fuel. Now,
Jesus,
Arnie,
they're loading fuel?
They'll be loading fuel at the end of the month. That's the plan.
Oh my God.
Here's what that means. You understand?
That's insane.
You understand that this plant, unlike all other nuclear plants, has a very important defect, which is that when steam leaks, from this plant, radioactive steam from the steam generators, there's no containment.
Oh God! Wait, I gotta set the
Listen
stage
to me. Let me finish.
Okay, go for it.
No containment. Now, this problem has happened elsewhere, but there was containment on the plant because it was built to minor standards. Now, why wasn't this plant built to minor standards? Well, as a matter of fact, consumers, when they got the plant from Bechtel and another company that built it, they filed a huge lawsuit and got a huge settlement over the fact that the plant was built wrong. So it never has complied with all the standards that apply to the Three Mile Island plant and all the other plants, that they're either operating or they're trying to restart. So it's a unique plant. So here's what happened. Holtec, after they took over, did an inspection and they found 1,400 cracks in steam generator tubes. Now, one of the things they do with those cracks is they plug them, which means they don't use them all. However, one of two things is going to happen. One, there'll be a crack after they start it up, because remember, when they shut it down, they didn't do a wet layup, which means they didn't keep the plant in good operating condition. Okay, and that meant that the cracking was much worse because they didn't treat the steam generator tubes with chemicals that would keep it safe. So they found all these cracks. So then they hired a company to come in, and they're repairing the cracks with a containment system that basically is obsolete. They don't have the ability to repair it up to the standard of a new generator. So when the same thing happened at Indian Point about 20 some years ago, they actually decided in the end to get rid of the steam generators. They had new ones sitting around and they replaced it. And even then, after they did that, they still had to shut the plant down because this concern about the steam leaking. However, what's different about Palisades, and Arnie can weigh in on this, is that the steam generator, this area where the leaking happens, there's no containment. So one of two things is going to happen. And this is the ultimate paradox in this situation. Number one, okay, there'll be a leak. And of course, the radiation miners will go off and so on and so forth. They'll have to shut down the plant. And then they're going to find out if they started it, there'll be more cracks and so on. Or if they're really lucky, there won't be a leak. There won't be a steam generator. But 18 months from now, they have to stop the plant. And guess what? They have to refuel it. By that point, they have to do an inspection. And it's very likely, it's almost certain that when they shut down the plant and do this inspection, there's going to be a lot more cracking because they failed to do the wet layup. So one way or another, the plant is going to have to shut down. So here's the question. Knowing everything that I said, and just Arnie can weigh in and supplement and talk more about the chemistry and the science. But here's the question. So why would Holtec in its right mind possibly want to start a plant that, number one, there could be a radiation emergency? They're already doing the evacuation plans. They've been running a test of all that, so on. There are many other problems with fire protection and so on. Why would Holtec in its right mind want to take this chance as a big company? Well, there's a couple of reasons. Number one, as Kevin has pointed out, the actual bill for this plant to get it up and running, if you include everything, this is the loans, the subsidies, the outright grants, the power purchase agreements that they have a couple of co-ops that are buying the energy from. And by the way, when the plant shuts down, they're going to have to buy power on the open market, which is going to be very expensive. The reason is that the money that they've gotten so far is only the down payment. And to collect the full $8 billion, the full amount of the subsidies and the loans and so forth, the plant has to operate. Okay. So that's part of it. It's partly financial. The other reason is that Holtec wants to build 2 more small modular reactors on the site. So obviously they want to get in the business of operating nuclear power plants, because that'll make it more likely that they'll get approved by the NRC for operating these small modular reactors. And on top of this, there's one other thing that Kevin brought up last week. We don't know this is true, but it makes sense. If Holtec decided to go public, this would be a very good time to go public, because with $8 billion in the pipeline, remember, it was Jennifer Granholm and the current governor, the former governor, and Gretchen Whitmer, who got all this going because they were going to save a few hundred jobs at a cost of many millions per job. It was a job development project. They got the ball rolling, and then Biden signed off on it as part of the infrastructure bill, the energy part. So Trump has come in and cut the solar and the wind part out of the energy bill, but he's agreeing with Biden and Whitmer on the nuclear side. So they're all in bed together. Okay. So why are the politicians, as Arnie has pointed out, why are they so excited about all this? Why are they all rolling over? The Michigan legislature, Congress, obviously the Democrats and the Republicans, and probably even some independents, as far as I know. Why do they all roll over on this? And the answer is because all of them, regardless of their political affiliation, all get support from guess which industry. So this is why, frankly, a lot of people don't vote, because they just know that both sides, no matter what you do on this public health and public safety issue, both sides are on the wrong side. And the irony is that no matter what happens, whether the plant shuts down the first day or the first month or 18 months from now, or whatever they mothball it for whatever reason, Holtec gets to keep the money.
Oh, God. We're going to talk later when we're done with this and we're staggering away. We're going to talk about the economy with Mike Hersh at the end here.
Sure.
Roger, by the way, Marion Edey asked where you are on your port. How far are you from where you're speaking to the Palisades?
It's about 75 miles. But here's the point that I want to make. And Arnie, you can weigh in on this. Nobody knows what's really going to happen because this has never happened before. No one's ever done this before. Indian Point, by the way, did shut down, even after they.
Yes, it did.
The public reaction to agriculture, to tourism, to real estate, all of this, Chicago is 70 miles from this plant. The fear factor. So if you're a pro-nuclear person, and Alan Blind, who was the design and engineering manager at this plant, was one of the people who filed an appeal and lost. His fear is that this is going to gut nuclear power because it's going to scare people to the point, as you know from your experience with 3 Mile Island as a nuclear advocate. So people like him who are supporters of nuclear power but against Palisades think that this could actually turn the tide against all this nuclear development. So he feels the whole nuclear industry is on the line, not just Palisades.
Well, I'm going to go to Arnie in a minute. I want to get Mimi too, but I do want to say that Roger and I share one of the most hair-raising experiences that we didn't know ever happened, which was we were both at the University of Michigan on October 5th, 1966. And we did not know that 40 miles away in Monroe, Michigan, home of George Armstrong Custer, that they had one of the closest calls ever to a gargantuan nuclear disaster.
But the punchline,
the meltdown at the Fermi nuclear.
The punchline to your story is we were investigative reporters. We found about it 8.5 years later.
Yeah, exactly.
Wrote a great book about it. But I want to tell you something else. There was another nuclear plant in Midland, Michigan, 2 of them actually, $4.5 billion that they built, never opened because the ground underneath the plant was too soft.
Yeah, right.
And there was a plant at Big Rock Point in Charlevoix, and that closed. It was a lot of radiation release. Michigan has had a very, very bad track record. And here's the key thing. Arnie, if you had been there at the hearings, the court hearings, the UAW sued Detroit, to stop Detroit Edison from building for me. They knew it wasn't going to work, this sodium fueled reactor. If you had been there, it would have been the same fight in the 50s and 60s. And the same battle with the same people and the same thing. And the plant never produced any power. It was $1 billion loser. And then they had to shut it down right away. And it almost took out Detroit, possibly.
Well, and Ann Arbor, for God's sakes. I mean, I found out about it when we started doing the anti-nuclear thing in Western Massachusetts in 1974. I was doing basic research. I stumbled across this book. We almost lost Detroit from that radical publication, Reader's Digest. And I'm reading this book, and about 15 pages in, I realized, oh my God, October 5th, 1966, I was at the University of Michigan, and I was the correspondent for the United Press in Ann Arbor. We had an AP machine. None of us ever heard a word about this catastrophe at the Fermi reactor. Mimi, I know you're in California. Go ahead, and then we're going to go back to Arnie. I do remind we still have 80 people with us. We are at the end of the hour going to go and talk about the economy. But go ahead, Mimi, please.
I'm so sorry. This was about the previous topic about fighting fascism, and a friend of mine tonight is presenting, and she studied under George Lakey, who's an organizing icon, and I'll put that in the chat. So that's tonight at 6:15. She did it locally in person, and now it's being done statewide in California, and the sign up is on Mobilize. Thank you so much. And
well,
sorry
thank you, Mimi, and stick with us towards the end of the hour. We'll come back to you on that.
Okay.
I do want to point out in California, we have another, shall we say, widow, as we call it in the print media, but straggler, Diablo Canyon in 2018. A deal was cut to allow Diablo Canyon to shut over the next 5 to 6 years by 24 and 25. And part of the deal was that the two reactors, which are at Avila Beach, west of San Luis Obispo on the Pacific Ocean, were in violation of state and federal water laws. And they were under a mandate to put in cooling towers if they were going to continue to operate. And they're looking at $2 billion for cooling towers, and that's why one of the reasons PG&E agreed to shut the two reactors at Diablo Canyon. And then in 22, while they're operating under this special, we're going to shut down order, Newsom goes in and kills the deal, but Diablo Canyon is still operating, violating the Clean Water Acts without building the cooling towers, with no man. So they bait and switched, for God's sakes. Sounds a lot like Palisades. Arnie, what do you got to say about what Roger just presented?
Arnie, can you talk about San Onofre? Because I think there's a parallel there.
Yeah, San Onofre also had leaking pipes.
Right. You could talk about the pipe, the problem in San Onofre, Arnie.
I worked on closing San Onofre, and I also was active on that 2018 agreement on closing Diablo in 2024. So I know a lot about that. But Roger, your discussion on Palisades was phenomenal. And I need to go back to Harvey. You said something about Arnie, if you were there in the 70s and 80s. In the 70s and 80s, I was on the opposite side of this argument.
Mm-hmm.
I worked in the industry ultimately as a senior vice president. I actually had a bumper sticker on my car that said, "Don't let Jane Fonda pull down your plants." So so that changed in 1990 with the whistleblowing, and I understood the corruption. But there's two things on Palisades. First off, the green light to allow Palisades to be resurrected. Resurrected is Holtec's word. Came during the Democrats.
Right.
Gave them the green light, and now under Trump, it's double green, or I can't even imagine what goes beyond that. But so Biden and the Democrats green lighted, and most of the grant money was fired up under a Democratic organization. But the other thing we got to remember is, Roger, you touched on this, but the Holtec is planning an IPO, an initial public offering. They're a privately held company, and they have they really don't have many assets. The only reason they're pulling off Palisades is they're working on opium, other people's money, so now they've got to get Palisades done so they can get the initial public offering.
Right.
The IPO is estimated to be about $10 billion. So the owner of Holtec, a guy named Singh, is going to walk away with billions if he pulls this off. And I was an executive, so I know about stock options and all this kind of stuff. And I am sure that the management at Palisades also has options tied to getting this IPO through. So they've got to get it done because they all become millionaires. And in Singh's case, billionaires, if the IPO goes. On the condition of the steam generators, they didn't properly stabilize the water when they shut it down. They didn't have to. They were going to shut it down and close it up and tear it down. And that contaminated water, that caustic water, sat for years and it ate away at the pipe. And now the NRC this has been professionally one of the most frustrating things I've ever seen, is getting the NRC to look at that residual contamination that's on the pipe. And I absolutely firmly believe that within the next 18 months and likely within the next 6 months, after it starts up, they're going to blow a tube. And as Roger said, when a steam generator blows, the releases go outside the containment. So it's unfiltered.
If there is a containment, but there is no containment.
There is a containment, yes.
Oh.
But the steam generator pathway bypasses the containment and goes outside it. So I am convinced that at best, we're going to have a tiny leak and some radiation is going to go into the community and blow away in a week or two. But much more likely, we're going to have a serious leak, and it's even possible to have a meltdown because of Holtec's actions and the NRC's complicity in green lighting those actions. I've written a lot of reports, and I'll always hem and haw a little bit about, well, a high probability, But this is not a high probability. This is a given. The tubes are going to break, and it's going to happen.
If this was a more modern plant, would there be a difference in what would happen under identical circumstances at a more modern plant in terms of containment?
Well, San Onofre had a tube break, and that was a somewhat more modern plant. And again, the release occurs outside the containment because the tube is the primary to secondary boundary. So when the tube breaks, the radioactive water breaks out into the non-radioactive water, which runs over to the turbine. So the condition of the steam generator prevents the contamination from leaving the containment. And this containment this steam generator is Swiss cheese. So Harvey, I've never
This is what they ran into. This is what they ran into with Southern California Edison, as you guys well know. And you'll be glad to know, by the way, as an update, that I live in Southern California in the valley between where the two fires were, the Altadena fire and the Palisades fire. And they are now making it very clear that Edison was responsible for one of those two fires because it continued to have transmission lines that were completely out to lunch and they should have been taken down years ago. And Edison didn't do it. This is the same company that ran the nuclear plant that you guys, thank God, brought down. I do want to tell you very quickly, I'll go to Lynn Feinerman, I can't resist. In 1991, Yankee Row, a small reactor in western Massachusetts, was hit by lightning and it shut down. And we got a movement together to force them into Congress. There was a hearing in Congress by a Pennsylvania congressman named John Kosmeyer. And we got to him. And he was approving Ivan Selin to be the new chair of the NRC. And they sent me down to testify. I sat next to Ivan Selin, and I was dying. I have to say this. I was dying to put my hand on his thigh just to see what he would do. But nonetheless, can you imagine? But Peter Kosmeyer threw him up against the wall and said, if you don't get the Yankee Row to test for embrittlement and to not open without testing for embrittlement, I'm not going to let you be the head of the chair of the NRC. And he agreed. And they never tested. Wow. And Yankee Row never reopened. Right. There is precedent. This is embrittlement, but nonetheless.
Right.
So the question then becomes, how serious is the industry taking what just happened at the NRC? Is there nervousness about Donald Trump now personally running the Nuclear Regulatory Commission?
There's been a couple of former commissioners that have written op-eds saying, the objectivity of the agency has been tarnished, when in fact it was already tarnished, and perhaps Trump just took a hammer to it. But yes, things are going to get worse because Trump is pushing for incredibly fast review period, something on the order of 9 months to approve a new license. And even though we had a lapdog, at least it took the lapdog 2 or 3 or 4 years to do that. So the speed at which the NRC is going to move is dramatically different under Trump. But the end result is the same. They are going to green light more plants. And I agree with you, Roger, that if Palisades breaks, it's going to affect the other plants like the TMI-1 and the Duane Arnold and all those. It's actually a dangerous precedent for the industry because one, Holtec has never ran a nuclear reactor in its life, and two, it's the most severely degraded reactor, with maybe the exception of Diablo Canyon, that I'm familiar with.
Well, so for the benefit of Harvey's group, what is very clear is that the last refuge, hope here is the court of public opinion. And Arnie, I think it's really important because you're going to be the one getting these phone calls, as Kevin, does, and Alan Blind and so on. You're going to be getting these phone calls from reporters who don't understand. So I think it's very important for this group to understand what the NPR interview is going to be like. And I'm going to be the reporter. Okay. And we're going to walk this group through what we expect to actually happen when NPR is interviewing Arnie or MSNBC or CBS or whatever, because you're going to be the talking head on this. So Arnie, can you tell us what actually went wrong? Is this something we have to worry about at all nuclear plants, or was there some special hazard here that led to this happening here rather than, in Minnesota or Iowa? What can you tell us why this plant was so vulnerable? What happened?
It is likely to happen at every single plant that is a pressurized water reactor, like 3 Mile Island.
Right.
The Duane Arnold plant is a boiling water reactor and may have different problems. But the net effect is that you let the water sit and put water in your toilet bowl for three years without flushing and see what it looks like.
So that's why this plant was more vulnerable than the other plants in other states?
They're all doing it. The TMI-1, I'm sorry, TMI-1, which is the one they want to start back up, they did not maintain the water chemistry because they didn't have to. The plan was they were going to shut it down. So now they're trying to resuscitate these old plants, and anyone that has a steam generator has that. But like Duane Arnold now has they didn't treat the water that was inside the nuclear reactor either.
Like not changing
the water to a high quality standard when you're going to cut up the nuclear reactor and sell it for scrap.
Like not changing the oil in your car because you're going to junk it, right?
Yes, right.
Wow, this is mind-boggling. Lynn Lynn is very well informed. Lynn, go ahead, and then Steve, and then Arnie. It's great to have you and Roger together. We appreciate it. Go ahead, Lynn.
Yes, thank you, both of you. Terrifying, particularly in view of the fact that right now, with Diablo Canyon still schlepping along, there are 2 major fires that have touched San Luis Obispo. The Gifford fire is still burning. The Madre fire may be under control. And when I tried to find out how close the Gifford fire was to Diablo, the answer was that there is no information about that.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm wondering, I'm concerned if anybody is monitoring plants vis-a-vis wildfires.
I've expressed concerns to Mothers for Peace about if there is a wildfire near Diablo, it will cause the transmission lines to fail, which means that the diesel generators will turn on. But in a firestorm, I am not at all convinced that the diesel generators will work because of the dust in the air and the heat in the air. And I think you could easily have a rerun of Fukushima where you don't have offsite power because the fire has knocked down the lines, and you can't run the diesels because the crap in the air has eliminated their ability to get oxygen to burn. So, but it's a concern. The NRC is not asking that question, and I've brought it up to Mothers for Peace, and I'm really not sure what they're doing with it.
Well, they'll just do it Fukushima. There, what they did at Fukushima, which is that all the guys in the operating areas ran out to the parking lot and hooked the thing up to their car batteries. I mean, come on. That's pretty amazing. Well, then the question also is, if God forbid the steam generator at Palisades does blow up, who's going to be there to measure the radiation?
I don't know.
All right, just a
Yeah.
question. Okay, Steve Caruso, and then we're going to continue with this. This is mind-boggling. Go ahead.
Well, I think people in Michigan all around that plant need to have radiation monitors. Maybe they already do. It's like the bread and the loaves and the fishes. But Arnie, you were talking about them recycling the stuff from these plants, and here we have. As soon as I thought about that, I thought of Piketon, and now we have Vina Coley in the room, which she just appeared. She popped in.
I'm here.
No, there she is. Hi, Vina.
Hi, I'm sorry. I have company.
And they have, okay, you can bug out if you want. I'm going to mute you. They have, Harvey, you're muted.
Yeah, go ahead.
So they've recycled a lot. I don't know what they've done with the waste from there. They tore down a lot of the old infrastructure and they're trying to ramp up this new production facility there. And we're still buying uranium from Russia, aren't we? Is that a fact? I keep hearing that all the time. So Piketon is on the radar.
Arnie, have you been following Piketon?
The Russian uranium and from Kazakhstan and from the old Soviet Union is right now in Metropolis at the Honeywell plant being converted into UF6, that then uranium hexafluoride, that then as a gas gets transported to up to Piketon. So yeah, we're using Russian uranium. American uranium only accounts for like 20% of the uranium in nuclear power plants. And we use Canadian, we use Australian, and we use Russian and the former Soviet bloc country. So to think that American-made nuclear power, it's not. About 80% of the uranium comes from sources outside the United States.
So when Putin meets Trump in Alaska, is he going to deliver some uranium when they get together? Is that part of the meeting?
The Russians are the only country in the world right now that can enrich uranium to this 19% that the Bill Gates reactor is going to run on out in Utah and stuff like that. So we will on small modular reactors, at least the initial ones, until Piketon gets up and running, we're going to be using Russian enriched uranium because the American enrichment processes can't get it up to the 19% that Bill Gates and others needs.
What is the actual schedule? And we'll get to Vina Coley in a minute. What is the actual schedule? How soon could they actually get a small reactor operating? I'm glad to see you laughing. Bertolt Brecht said, "He who laughs has not yet heard the bad news." So tell us here.
They claim they could build them on an assembly line in 3 years. There's no assembly line, so you got to build the assembly line. And for assembly line reactors, Palisades was an assembly line reactor, and they used the wrong welding material, the same welding material they used at Diablo Canyon.
Right.
And so, it's not like a car that you drive it back to the dealer when there's a manufacturing mistake. What do you do? So, it's going to be 10 years before you get the first one or two. And I've said this before, climate change is a now problem, and we need now solutions. So if you're going to get the first of a kind out by 2034 even, that's the demo plan. And before you can then get the economies of scale going, you're in 2045 and I'm 100 years old and all that kind of stuff. So we have to solve this problem with the technology we have now. And that's wind, water, and solar.
So you're saying if someone comes up to you and you're in a debate and they say, well, we're going to have small modular reactors, how quickly can we get them under optimal circumstances?
I'm saying the first one could go online in 2033, the first one. And then when you work the bugs out, I was involved in the first reactors back in the early 70s, and they only ran half the time. And it took us 20 years to work the bugs out to get them to operate at 85 or 90%. So this is not, we're not any smarter now. I've seen things fail with supercomputers figuring them out, and I've seen things fail with engineers on slide rules figuring. New things break. It's that simple. And these things are going to break, and then we're going to have to retool the manufacturing processes. So for small modular reactors to make a dent in the overall energy picture, you're talking 2045. And I did a study. It's in Truth Out. It's a good one, I think. If you look at if you build 1,000 big nuclear reactors by 2050, which was the goal of the nuclear industry, there's 100 in the United States now. But if you build 1,000 of them, you're only going to decrease the amount of carbon dioxide in the atmosphere by 4%.
Oh God!
It's not a silver bullet, Harvey. Now what they'll say is, well, we're displacing the coal in electricity. But if you look at all the carbon that's being out there that's causing this problem, 1,000 nukes only drops the amount of carbon that's being added to the atmosphere by 4%. It's a false solution.
And this is in your article in Truth Out?
Yeah. I forgot what it's called.
It doesn't matter. If you'll send us the link.
If you look up Truth Out Arnie Gundersen, there's 1 or 2 or 3 of them in there.
Okay.
And it starts with, I was a member of the nuclear priesthood.
Okay. All right. As opposed to the rabbinate. Okay. Steve Caruso, you raise your hand again? Steve?
Yeah, I'm trying to find that article for.
Okay.
But the hotter fuel in these smaller reactors is more radioactive. That's why they're concentrating more. Is that right? So
they're concentrating the uranium more so they don't have to have as many refueling outages. Right now, the big reactors are running at 5 or 6% uranium, and every 18 months or even 2 years, they do a refueling outage. If you concentrate it to 19%, by the way, 20% is what is considered bomb grade. So they want to be right underneath that bomb grade limit at 19%. They can probably go, if everything else worked right, they could probably go 4 or 5 years between refueling outages. So it's an attempt to save a week or 2 a year to make them more cost competitive.
Well, you got to transport the fuel out. You got to expose all the people to the radiation, how much of this fracking radiation these truckers are handling from the fluids. And, the Earth is only so big, and I think we need to put that in perspective with the atmosphere being only 3 miles high of usable atmosphere, 8,000 miles in diameter, 3 miles high of usable atmosphere, 8 billion people on a planet, and these guys want to light the place on fire with nuclear fuel, essentially. I mean, like Harvey just did an article with, who was that? There's like 900 plants on the planet, nuclear plants.
Carl Grossman.
Carl, who was here. How much heat, collectively are those things putting off in an atmosphere that's so thin, it's just barely covering the surface of the Earth. The astronauts, they understand all this, but we don't have that perspective. We got these hoodlums running around trying to torch the place, and they're getting away with it.
Well, so one thing real quickly, Arnie, and we want to go to Mike Hersh, but maybe you don't know this, but what actually did Trump's bombing of the alleged Iranian bomb facilities, what impact did it have?
Well, they knew it was coming, and the enriched uranium is sitting in these canisters that are bomb-proof. So they didn't eliminate the enriched uranium. There was one facility that then took that gas. It's a enriched gas. It looks like a giant propane cylinder. And they took that gas and they converted it into metal. One of the things they bombed was the facility that converted the gas into metal. And that was damaged, but it wasn't eliminated. They probably slowed things down by 2-3 months.
How much enriched uranium do we know that the Iranians have in their inventory, in their stockpile?
As gas and as solid, I think they probably have about 1,000 pounds. It only takes 20 to make a bomb. So they in theory, but then they have to do the rest of it. They've got to make the uranium slide together just right with the explosive charges to make it work. So yes, they likely have as either gas or as metal, probably more as gas, but something like 1,000 pounds of uranium. That's reasonable.
Well, it was 150 pounds that destroyed Hiroshima. Is that correct?
Yeah, and that was a poorly designed bomb. I mean, we could do better now.
Oh, thank you. What about plutonium? How much plutonium did they have?
Less, you know.
But it was only 15 pounds of plutonium that destroyed Nagasaki.
Right.
So they do have
like
plutonium.
the North Koreans are making their bomb with plutonium. You don't need to enrich uranium to make a bomb. You can take just essentially dirt, uranium from the ground, run it through a nuclear reactor and make plutonium. And that's directly chemically extracted. You don't need a diffusion process to enrich it. You could take plutonium like the North Koreans have and put a blanket of thorium around it, and you get a thermonuclear weapon. In fact, I found metallic thorium downwind from the Korean sites in Japan. So I think I think the Koreans are enhancing the output of their plutonium bombs with a reflector made of metallic thorium.
So, I joked and I got yelled at, of course, but I joked that in the world of the nuclear materials, you could get 15 pounds of plutonium to destroy Nagasaki again, basically on eBay. I mean, it's not hard to find, right?
Well, you have different friends on eBay than I do.
Okay. Well, I'm glad you're laughing again. Well, this has been amazing, Arnie. Mike, Arnie, do you want to finish up and Roger and give us a summary, and then we'll go to Mike Hersh? Or Mike, you have a question about the nuclear stuff?
I was just going to point out that Vina keeps trying to get in. So, Vina, if you want to ask a question or make a comment.
Vina Colley, do you know Arnie?
Vina, I'm sorry.
All right. Vina and Arnie, do you know each other?
I don't think so. I don't know for sure. But you're talking about the high assay low enriched uranium at Piketon. They started it up in 2023, and they was going to do a test run, but they've never shut it down. And from my understanding, they can go 19.7% there. Mm-hmm. And they've already sold the land to this guy who said he works for Oaklaw or whoever for small modular reactors. And at Piketon, since the beginning of the startup in the 50s, we had been reprocessing reactor fuel. We got the Russian stuff sent straight to Piketon, the megatons, megawatts in 92. Mm-hmm. And then we have 24,000 depleted uranium cylinders sitting outside that are leaking. And so what else they do out here, we're not sure. They don't talk to the community. We're not allowed to ask questions. We can ask questions, but they're not allowed to answer. And so if they're the high assay low enrich, is it the same as reprocessing too? Because I keep asking questions. Why is it high and then called low? Is it high and they're making it low? Because I've read too where they want to send all of these facilities, they want to send their transuranics here for us to reprocess it still. And that's what made all of us workers sick, was reprocessing reactor fuel. And we didn't know that we had plutonium and americia and neptunium at the site. And right now we have the highest rate of cancer in the state of Ohio, and 107% above the national average for little kids for leukemia.
Yeah, I'm on the periphery of some of this Piketon stuff, working for a law firm, and I've signed an NDA, so I really can't get into a lot of the details about it. But they call it HALEU, high assay, low enrichment, or something like that. Probably.
Yeah.
Yes.
And they get to this 19.5 or 19.7%. The Israelis threatened to bomb Iran. When they got to 20%, they were worried about the Iranians making a bomb. And here we're sitting at 19.7. But you can also downblend the uranium that was taken from the Soviet program, the stuff we took from Ukraine and all that. That's highly enriched. That's 93%. And I worked on a reactor that had 93% fuel back. You can downblend that and essentially mix it with less enriched stuff to get to a 2, but then you run the risk of having criticality, essentially creating a bomb as you're downblending it. So Yeah, it's expensive. And why, forget all the fears of radiation. Why are we spending this kind of money on that issue when we've got things that are cheaper right now? Wind, water, and solar are so much cheaper.
Yeah, really, and faster to build. So again, Arnie, give us the prospectus. If you were building, if you were in charge of the industry, how fast could you produce the first small modular reactor?
I think you could have it operational by 2033, essentially 6 or 7 years, the first one.
Okay. And then you got to lead into whatever.
Yeah.
And
then you to get the assembly line rolling, you've probably got another 5 years before you've standardized the design and worked out the bugs. So the second, third, and fourth ones roll off in 2038, and before you've got 1,000 of them, before you really can have a meaningful contribution to electric production, you're at 2045. It just doesn't make sense for a problem that's a now problem.
What's the cost comparison between a small modular reactor and renewables, wind and solar?
Well, nobody's given the number. That's the beauty of it, is they are not putting their houses on the line. The executives who say, well, we can solve climate change. There's nobody out there who says that I can compete with renewable. They're saying, well, we're a big boy toy. We can run 24/7, 365. And therefore we should have some sort of a premium for. But California now is running 57% of the electricity California used for the last 7 months has been renewable.
Right. And it would have been 100% if Newsom hadn't intruded on the deal from 2018 and had followed through and shut the Apple Canyon.
Yeah. And the peak, Harvey, has been at least 75% of the days in the last 7 months. The entire peak has been covered by renewables. So this concept of needing base load power is obsolete. It used to be the cheapest plant ran all the time, and then the next cheapest plant ran less time, and the next cheapest plant. And so they turned on as the load went up. But the nuclear plants are the most expensive plant, and they're running as the base load. And it makes no economic sense.
Well, unless you're an investor in Pacific Gas and Electric, and they're the only ones that make sense for. And Gavin Newsom, who somebody's paying big bucks under the table. Arnie Gundersen, this is fantastic. We still have 70 people with us, for God's sakes. Is there anything else you want to say to us? And then Raja, before you guys sign off? We're going to talk about the economy now. We got 20 minutes to talk about the economy. Go ahead.
What is the tariff situation on the uranium from Russia? Is it exempted?
Uranium from Russia, is it exempted?
I think it is, yeah.
No tariffs on uranium from Russia.
I don't think there's any tariffs from anything from.
Well, I guess Trump and Putin in Alaska are negotiating. Trump will probably take a delivery of uranium from Putin. Is there anything else, Roger or Arnie, before we turn to the economy?
No, I'm good. Thanks.
Good, thanks.
You were fantastic, both of you. Thank you so much. And as we always say when we finish talking about nuclear power, go blue. Anyway, all right, you guys. Marion Edey, please go ahead. And then Mike Hersh, we're going to jump in 20 minutes on what's happening with the economy, which ain't pretty, guys. And if you want to talk about what's going to shape our politics going forward, it's the economy.
Well,
Marion, go ahead.
You made one statement that Arnie Gundersen was the only person who could talk sense after Fukushima. I want to beg to differ that Bob Alvarez could talk sense after Fukushima, and I wanted to bring him into this space to honor him.
Absolutely. Bob
and maybe we've done that already, and I missed it because I missed a bunch of calls. But does anybody know of any plans to have a memorial service for Bob? Because I was going to ask Amber the same question. I had offered shortly after his death, say to her that I would be glad to help if something was held in the DC area.
Well, we can do something online next week if you want. But Bob Alvarez was a monumental figure in saving the planet. Nobody really was more not only for nuclear power, but also for Agent Orange. Agent Orange would never have come to the forefront had Bob Alvarez not been working for Senator John Glenn, both of them ironically from Ohio. But Marion, let's set something up for next week.
Well, we could set something up for next week. What I would really like, though, is for us mammals to have in-person gatherings. And I'm going to see if I can get Amber to agree to some time when those of us who are close enough to come could do something in the DC area in
Wonderful.
person.
That would be great. That would be great.
I would like to do that. So I'm not going to, and plus I got some work deadlines. I'm not going to decide to do this next week on here. I want to do something in person. I'll see what I can do. But I just wanted to bring him into this conversation.
Bob Alvarez
That's it.
a monumental character and a wonderful guy, and really miss him. Thank you, Marion Edey. I wanted to mention John Steiner is with us, and we still have 65 people with us. We can go another 20 minutes till 4:20 California time when it's time to go out and toke up, because we want to now turn our attention to the economy. I did want to have a discussion about Sydney Sweeney, but that can wait. Turns out Sydney Sweeney is a serious actress, and she did portray Reality Winner, and also she was in Handmaid's Tale. These are as somebody in Trump's ilk would say, these are products of the left, and so we want to talk about her. I also want to ask people to think about what possibly more could come out of the Epstein files. I mean, the 27th woman has come forward publicly to accuse Donald Trump of sexual imposition. I mean, what more do we need about Donald Trump that could come from the Epstein files? I'd like to hear about it, actually, if anybody's got any ideas. But we next want to go into the economy, which it's the economy stupid. And I read a shocking piece yesterday or the day before, might have been in the Times actually, that there's a tremendous amount of feedback now coming from the restaurant industry, and that restaurants all over the country are being forced to close because they can't buy food cheap enough to keep their prices down enough to stay in business. So, and the economy as a whole is clearly, I don't know if it's too premature to say collapsing, but do people want to comment on this, please, in the last 20 minutes that we have? I know I talked about it with you, Mike Hersh, and we have touched on the important question of, gerrymandering backfiring. But what do we now, for the next 20 minutes, want to say about the economy? I hear somebody who's unmuted.
Yeah, Sluggo, you're absolutely right. Economics drives politics. You can use whatever rhetoric you want, but when the economy is in free fall, you're going to get a change in the party in power. It just, that's just the way it goes. About a third of the country, close to maybe 40%, will vote for any Republican, and the same rough percentage will vote for any Democrat. It's the people who are free-floating who will decide the outcome of any election, and that's definitely true of the midterms. No matter how much gerrymandering anybody does, if the economy is in the dumpster, then your party's going to be in the dumpster too. And between Trump's reckless tariffs, on again, off again tariffs, up again, down again tariffs, and his turning over a huge budget for ICE to terrorize people who either may be an immigrant or may look like an immigrant. And keep in mind, after the Mexican-American War, we took over a huge part of Mexico, including a lot of people who look like the rest of the indigenous population in North and South America. And letting loose people without skills, giving huge signing bonuses to people off the street and letting them loose is terrorizing people who perform important work for our economy, and it's frightening people into not going to work. And that goes right at the heart of what you were saying about restaurants and food, and prices are going up, and then you have this reckless tariff regime that Trump is inflicting on us, and it's a recipe for another great recession, if not another great depression.
Well, Brent Miller, go ahead. I mean, this is a discussion really at the heart of everything that's going on in the country right now. And Trump is trying to hide the statistics, but there's a lot of stuff he can't hide. Brent Miller, and go ahead, Brent. I don't know if
Yes, I would like to talk about my personal experiences since the whole tariff situation has started. I've noticed month by month my medications are incrementally going up in price. And it's now from January to now, all of my medications combined together are probably about $120 more expensive than they were before Trump took office.
wow, that's serious stuff.
Yeah,
And
and these are medications that I need to take to survive.
and are you on Medicare or Medi-Cal or anything like that?
I'm not eligible for it in the state of Florida, unfortunately. I would meet the criteria immediately in other states. I don't want to go into too much detail for privacy reasons, but I've undergone like last resort treatment for my conditions, and in other states that would have automatically qualified me for those programs.
Oh my God. Well, we have to, let's take a look at the summary, or a summary of all the impacts that Trump has imposed on the economy and where they're going to lead us. Okay, we can start with tariffs, which, you know, everybody understands are completely impactful and damage people at the hardcore. We have the firing of God knows how many federal employees.
Mm-hmm.
The impact of that. We have energy prices. You know, Trump's attack on renewable energy has had an enormous impact on the price of energy. And so has Gavin Newsom's in California. We were in the middle of a transition to a 100% renewable based electrical system, which Newsom has undercut, but still, as Arnie Gundersen points out, very, very substantial percentages of our electricity in California are coming from renewables. But what Newsom has done by forcing us to continue to pay for Diablo Canyon has been devastating, at least $11, $12 billion over market. And Roger Rappaport was talking from Michigan about the impact on trying to bring Palisades up. What other impacts can people, I'm sure I'm missing some, what other impacts can people thinking about the Trump impact on the economy? That is sooner or later. There was a quarter, 2 quarters ago, of negative growth. And then last quarter, somehow, if there had been two in a row, it would have been officially a recession. So last quarter, they posited some growth, very small. So we're not technically in a repression. Marion Edey, do you want to jump in and add to that?
I think one of the huge impacts on our economy is the complete crash of the international tourism industry and the loss of all the foreign students that make up the core of much of our intelligentsia for future technological change. I mean, a lot of the folks who have been driving innovation in this country came here as student immigrants. And not only are the students not coming, but the tourists are not coming. Nobody wants to come here anymore. So I think that's a pretty big economic impact too. That's all.
Right. Well, one of the sources of capital that people have never talked about it, I mean, I'm a historian. It never occurred to me how big an impact, how big a piece of our economy has come from foreign students. You know, our university system until now has been the greatest university system in the history of the world, thanks to the GI Bill after World War II. Basically, that was what fueled it. Greta Malaise, I'm trying to unmute you, but can't do it so far. Steve, maybe you can help Greta Malaise.
Can you hear me now?
Oh, yeah, we can. Okay. So, you know, foreign currency coming in from around the world for, you know, foreign students and for tourism have been a huge part of the economy. And they're disappearing now. So, Greta, did you want to add to this discussion?
Well, I was thinking about all the farmers, but not only just the farmers not being able to hire people, but the farmers markets. My friend lives in downtown New York and goes New York City, and she was always going to farmers markets, and she said there literally nobody there because the immigrants are afraid to work there, and a lot of them have shut down their booths because they can't, they're afraid they're going to get arrested. So, I mean, he's really killed the economy with not allowing immigrants in and not allowing immigrants to feel safe. So that's what I was going to share.
Well, thank you for that, Greta. That's a good point. And then there's another piece, which is part of us here in LA. The Olympics are due here in 2028, and it's a multi-billion-dollar operation. Olympics had really mixed economic impacts over the century or so. But can Los Angeles really, in good conscience, invite athletes and their fans from around the world to a city where we have a police state arresting people off the street with no credentials and no reason whatsoever? How can LA, in good conscience, continue to host the Olympics? It's a very big deal. Talking about billions of dollars here. Dr. Nancy, a fellow Angelino.
I think
Nancy?
I like to think about where things come from. And I think one of the most descriptive comparison is back when unions were big. I like to say when America was great. Not only did the super wealthy pay up to 90% of their higher income, but the owners of businesses paid an average of about, or I'm sorry, they earned about 50 times what their average worker made. And now the average owner of a business makes 350 times what they're paying their average worker. So the wealth is the money's drifting up. It's absolutely trickling up. And one thing I've learned, or I've realized, is during the presidential debates, I forget the name of the candidate who talked about universal basic income, but it makes sense.
John Anderson many years ago did.
I mean, either we have to reinstate the 4 laws that Reagan undid to allow owners and business leaders to screw their employees. Either we have to reinstate those laws, or we need to do a universal basic income.
Yeah, I 100% agree with that. Nobody should go hungry or homeless in this world today. And, listing the impacts that Trump is having on the economy, nobody is going to argue any of them are good. We do have Gary O'Connor on. I did want to mention Gary O'Connor has been working on the project to solarize the parking lots at Diablo Canyon. I'm sorry, at Dodger Stadium. And, we're looking at, it was Andrew Yang. Whatever happened to him?
That's him, Andrew Yang.
Whatever happened to him? We don't hear from him anymore.
He sounded crazy back then, but he makes sense today.
People working on that before he even came out with it. That's why I thought it could be used on his platform. So yeah, the way things are going, everybody's got hoarding the money. Who's going to have money to live?
Nobody. Well,
remember Occupy Wall Street? Remember all that?
Yeah,
that was where UBI was starting too, because people saw this coming miles away. They all knew this was happening. And of course, in the big cities, there's all this homelessness, and now they're invading Washington, D.C. to get rid of the homeless. What are they going to do? Ship them to Rwanda? Yeah, wait for it.
Yeah, it's pretty brutal. So the only thing that really clearly could bring, well, not the only thing, but, no one, I think people this week are going to start to talk seriously about the economy. I mean, we've really expended, I believe, the curve on Epstein. I don't know what further could come. There's an article I sent you, Steve, running around 27 women, including women who were teenagers, with Epstein being assaulted by Epstein and Trump. I mean, that's old news already. I don't know what else they're looking for in these files, but I don't know anybody who doesn't believe that Donald Trump was capable. There you go. Stacey Williams, number 27. Does anybody seriously believe in this country that Donald Trump was not whatever capable of sexually assaulting a teenager in the presence of Jeffrey Epstein? Does anybody believe that that never happened? I don't know. I do know, but I think the Epstein situation. I guess a lot of MAGAs are being disillusioned by something that everybody else knew, apparently. But now we're going to get deep into the economy. I can never remember in my 80 years in this country reading an article that said that restaurants were doomed because of rising food prices. But, we did takeout Saturday night, and I had sticker shock, I got to say. We had 3 people over, and it was just Thai food, and it was about 50% more than I thought it was going to be, literally. So anybody have anything to add about where we're going with the economy and what it's? The other question then becomes, will Trump be able to hide what's really going on with the economy as he attacks the bureaus of statistics? Does anybody believe that?
No, Gary, you're on mic. Do you want to talk or?
No, Gary can't. Gary O'Connor can't talk, apparently.
Oh, okay. What?
So, Mike Hersh, anybody else want to jump in? We've got 4 minutes left till toke up time. But next week, I want to do a deep dive and let's think about who the best people will be to talk about the economy. We can also talk about Sydney Sweeney's career and maybe those 27 women who accused Trump. But we do have 2 great presenters coming up next week. This was an astounding call. That first hour with Ken Bennett and John Brakey was priceless. And so, Steve, if we can turn that into a document and publish it at freepress.org, that would be great. And then having Arnie Gundersen, I don't know, people who are not in the nuclear world here, Arnie Gundersen has become the great guru, and having him on here was really terrific. Donald Smith, and then I think we'll wrap. Go ahead, Donald. Donald Smith.
Yeah, okay. So I posted there in the chat a video from Facebook. Sorry to use Facebook. I think it was very clever video made with AI, but what it showed was like basically the day the MAGA base turns against Trump because they realize they've been screwed. It's a powerful video showing, the Trump ballroom and all the very rich people enjoying luxury there, and then the MAGA base are, they've lost their jobs, they've lost their health care, the environment is bad, people are getting arrested, and they realize we've been screwed. And so anyway, I'll paste it again
Put the link up. Put the link up if you would. We can link to Facebook. And I gotta say, I hate to say this, but one of the things that has completely blown my mind is what Trump did to the Rose Garden at the White House. I mean, you mentioned this ballroom, Donald. He completely paved over the Rose Garden at the White House. Was Jackie Kennedy, and I mean, is he going to make it a parking lot for Teslas? I mean, it's horrible. But our economy now, I mean, I got to say, compared to Donald Trump, Herbert Hoover was a saint. I mean, Herbert Hoover was actually a very capable guy. He had good morals. He was skilled. He was an engineer. I mean, he completely screwed up because he had no sense of the common people. But here we have Donald Trump. I mean, if this guy had set out conscious to destroy the American economy, it's hard to imagine he could have done a better job. I mean, what else can he do to destroy our way of living? So there, oh my God, look at that.
In the university system, the count of our wealth and our prestige is the universities. People would look up to us, and now researchers aren't going to come here.
Nobody's going to come here. And no one ever, as a historian, I never remember reading or hearing a discussion of our university system as a source of income. And clearly it has been. And we've taken our tourist industry for granted as well. It's a huge industry. And you know what else is gone? Our auto industry. Finished. So let's take that up in a week. On that happy note, thank you, Steve. Thank you, Mike. Thank you, Donald. everybody on another amazing session. And it's 4:20 time to LA time. Time to go toke up. We'll see you everybody next week. And no nukes. We'll see you in Solartopia. Thank you, everybody. Take care.